Good to see you out here. I'm not going to waste any time because there's a flutterby. I want you to see the flutterby. Somebody's got a swan plant somewhere. Let's just enjoy this monarch butterfly. It's pretty fresh and beautiful. Look at that. Just going to stay here. It's so nice that they don't run away. And I know I'm going to start talking about emotional addiction if you're jumping on and thinking, what the hell is she doing? Showing off butterflies and flowers. Oh, there it is. Fluttering over here. More flowers. Because of course it's busy. But I'm doing this on Facebook and it's live, and it takes a little while for the live to come up and to be shared out in the groups where people will find it. And I like to spend that time enjoying my garden. G'day Mike, great to see you. And today we're just enjoying this fabulous flutterby that's out here because it's so lovely. And I mean, what else do you need if there's a flutterby to watch? It's fabulous. So we're just going to enjoy that. Look at the dots on its body. I mean, really, it's just so beautiful. And it's just busy doing its thing. It's like it's showing off for us, really. So, wow. How fabulous is that? Which flower shall I feed from now? I don't really want to look at anything else. It's too beautiful. And I don't get this kind of opportunity. It's a pretty fresh flutterby. It hasn't been out for long. Oh, it's just glorious. So, yeah, I'll probably will tour a bit of the garden, but really, I mean, the exciting thing that's happening here, of course, is that the autumn coming out. So I'm just going to show you these. Notice the little checkerboard pattern on the inside of their petals. And that's a really lovely thing. You don't notice it unless you stop to really look. So there'll be a lot more of them in a few days. They're just starting now. And of course the little violas are just finishing. Well, not just finishing, they've been finishing for a while, but they're still gorgeous. So I like to enjoy those. And we still have calendula. They're so bright. I really enjoy that. So yeah, this is the garden, and those are the autumn crocus because it is autumn. And here we have, I mean, these are spectacular. You can see they're a little bit worse for wear. But these are belladonna, and they're so abundant, and the scent is pretty gorgeous. I could just stand here and I could sit here and breathe it. And there's another one coming out here. It's never as abundant, this one. It doesn't make as many flowers, but it's a different colour. There's a really fresh one. It's a different colour and it's got another beautiful scent, so, you know, they're worth having. Spectacular. I think I counted 37 stems on this one, so it's pretty cool. And just a little quick tour of the garden. It's very green, which is nice. And we have fuchsia, dangling ballerinas and shiny green leaves, and lots of other bits and pieces growing in there. And I just enjoy the foliage and the little hidden things that are slowly settling in and starting to flower. See, there's a fuchsia here that's getting happier. And we have these little pink Japanese anemones. So sharp and beautiful, and we still have Luculia flowers, which smell fabulous. Oh, look at that. Got a little insect on it. They smell really good. I like things that smell good, so I've grown things that smell good. And yeah, everything's a little bit scruffy, but still flowering, and that's autumn for you. See, we had some rain, and the flowers aren't fresh, and look, this one makes fruit. Apparently you can make jam with these. Oh, and there's even a spider's web. Can you see that? So yeah, this is the garden. It's a late rose there. That's the compassion rose, and there are going to be more of them because look at this. It's sent up some really huge sprouts. That really impressed me. So yeah, this is the garden. It always needs work. It's a garden. It needs work. But you can see there are flowers growing, and I enjoy those. So now I'm going to turn the camera around and go inside and tell you what I've been doing today. Right, the camera has adjusted. It's a bit hard, you know, the sky is bright and my face by comparison is dark, so it doesn't always cope very well. But now I've got to go inside and take off my hat. It won't be a thing. Get off here and close the door and just put everything over here where it's out of the way. Right, now this is the moment where I get to put the camera down and hope that it stands up and it's more or less level. Yeah, okay, I'm not going to fiddle with it. I think I might be slightly skew-if, but I don't want the thing to fall over. The little stand is great. We got it for nothing. My husband found it on the street. But it just, I've got to be a bit careful with it. So today I'm excited. I mean, the flutterby is gorgeous. You know, I realise I've spent a little time. But I'm excited because I started off, however long ago it was that I started writing, and I knew that the very first thing that I wanted to explain was emotional addiction. And today I've actually done that. If you've been listening to these videos that I do once a week, because I'm on this process of writing content for a website that's going to be helping people to understand how we function inside and how they can change, then you'll know I've been talking about this. I'm getting closer to explaining emotional addiction. Yay! Well, today I've actually done it. And I know that I've been talking about receptor sites and how they change. Like when we think a thought, we have a feeling, and our brain makes chemicals called peptides that get sent into our body, and they actually often hit the hormonal centers in the body, and the hormones pour out, but our body ends up feeling exactly what we were thinking. Hi Emily, lovely to see you. This is just what happens when we think a thought. And over the time that I've been writing and doing these lives, I've been explaining that, you know, you can think a thought and you can have the feeling. You can think a thought and have the feeling, and also you can have the feeling and then think a thought. It works both ways. And we can get stuck in this. And people can get so stuck in their thinking and feeling that their body actually changes so that now they have to think and feel that way, even if they don't want to. Their body is actually now demanding and craving and saying, I need you to feel these feelings that you are so accustomed to feeling, because if you don't do that, I can't work. So what's that about? So last week I talked about how receptors, when a cell in our body dies, and there's, I think there's a million or 10 million cells, I've forgotten the numbers, but there are millions of cells that die and are replaced in our body every second. Like, there's a lot of stuff, you know. Let's say it's 10,000 cells a second. I just can't remember. Or if it's a million, I don't know. But the point is that whenever a cell in our body dies, another cell will divide to replace it. And that's just what happens. And the cells all have receptors on their surfaces. And the peptides that we make by thinking and by learning and by having experiences, and all those things will make our brain produce peptides, dock into those receptors and affect how the cell functions inside. And, you know, the cell basically, except for our red blood cells, all of our cells produce proteins which they use to make our bodies run. That's keeping it real simple. And those receptors are vital because the skin of the cell, the membrane it's called, is actually like the brain of the cell. People used to think that the DNA in the nucleus was the brain. It's not. The DNA is just a factory. Hi, Christina! It just pushes proteins out. But something has to tell that DNA what to do. And it's receptors docking into, it's peptides docking into the receptors on the cell that carry the message that goes into the cell and goes into the nucleus and tells the nucleus which protein to produce. And not just which protein, but which version of the protein. Because we have, 23,688 genes, I think, you know, in our
genome, and yet there aren't that many. There aren't no. That's how many. There are that many genes, but there are a lot more possibilities in our DNA. You see, I haven't looked at the. I've been so busy explaining this, I haven't looked at the numbers. We have way more. There's a difference between the number of proteins that we produce and how many genes we have. There's so many, and I've got it right now. We have 23,688 genes, and yet we produce hundreds of thousands of proteins. So how does that work? Well, the genes can be expressed differently, and how they're expressed is affected by the signal that comes into the cell, the peptide signal that comes into the cell through those receptors. So it's pretty important what's signaling your cell. And if you think that your thought makes your feeling, which signals your cell, then that's kind of important. And if you then think, okay, so if I keep thinking and feeling and thinking and feeling and thinking and feeling means peptides, and peptides go to the cell and they signal the cell, what's going to happen? Well, those receptors are like little docking ports, and they've got all this machinery, and they need energy to run, and they take time to do their thing, and then they're supposed to have a gap in between to rest and reset. And if there are so many of the same kinds of peptides hitting that cell on and on and on and on and on, those receptors get tired. Just like anybody because the receptor has to open up and the peptide docks in, and it goes into the cell and it signals the DNA, and the DNA makes a protein, and then the peptide comes out again and goes off, and it gets recycled. And it goes round and round again, then the receptor has to do it again. If it doesn't get to rest, then the cell gets tired. And what happens then, if that cell maybe gets so tired, it gets damaged, it gets broken down because it's just getting hammered, then that cell dies, another cell will replace it. But that cell that divides to replace it has been living in the same environment. It's also getting hammered by the same peptides, right? It's not like they just hit this cell and not that one. It knows it's still healthy, but it knows that environment is really stressful. And so what it can do is it can change what its daughter cells are like when it divides. It can say, okay, this environment, this bloodstream, this body that I'm in is just full of anger peptides. This is all the time. This person's angry all the time. I've got so many anger peptide receptors, and they're always being triggered. There's so many anger peptides coming into the cell. I'm overwhelmed with orders to make anger proteins. I'm fed up with this. My daughter cells are not going to like this. So I'm going to make my daughter cells have fewer receptors for anger peptides. Now it doesn't matter if the body, if the environment, if the thinking and feeling, if the person's going around being angry all the time. That cell is cool because there are fewer receptors for anger peptides. It's like, okay, you can be angry out there, I don't know. But there's a problem with this. The cell actually still needs some anger peptides to get in. It does. Because anger peptides don't just give us angry feelings. We also need anger peptides. Anger peptides are stress, they're stress chemicals. And our bodies need stress hormones, usually they are hormones, in order to live. If we don't have them, if we don't have cortisol, if we don't have the adrenocorticosteroids, if we don't have them, we die. Hi, Tristan. Our cells just have to have these chemicals, so some of them have to get in. But hang on a minute. Our cells now have fewer receptors for those same chemicals that we need. And our cells have got those fewer receptors because it's got used to having the high levels of anger peptides floating around. You with me? Before, we had low levels of anger peptides, and our cells had normal numbers of receptors, and the peptides were there and they would get in and they could be used because our cells need those peptides. But then something happened and we got angry, and we stayed angry. We told all of our friends and family and anybody who would listen about this thing that happened, which was the reason why we were angry, and we stayed angry. We got stuck in it. Maybe it was traumatic. Maybe it was really hard, and we have a really good reason to be angry. It doesn't matter whether our continued feeling and thinking and feeling about it is justified or not. It doesn't matter at all. What happens on the cellular level is that our cells get tired. If we stay in stress, if we stay in anger or sadness or depression or judgment or self-criticism or blaming or whatever it is, pick your favorite negative emotion, our cells, it's like the experience that we're still thinking about 5 months, 12 months, 2 years, 10 years, 15 years later. It's like the experience never ended. The cell just keeps on living with the chemistry of that experience, like it's still going on and going on and going on and going on and going on. And so it adapts. It shuts down because it gets overwhelmed with those chemicals and it just gets tired. It says, fine, I'm just not going to have so many receptors. But then you have a different problem because the cell still needs those things. And now, because it still needs them, some are still getting in, but only when there's a higher level of those stress peptides in the bloodstream. Doesn't work when it's down low anymore. So if you've been angry for a year and your body has got used to being angry, because that can happen, right? We just get used to being angry, or we get used to being sad, or we get used to being fearful, or we get used to being judgmental, or we get used to being whatever it is that we're used to being, feeling like we're awful or whatever. And then suddenly one day, for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or maybe an hour or two, we stop feeling that way. What happens? Levels of anger peptides in your bloodstream go down, right? Cool, I'm feeling calm. This is nice. And then all of a sudden, your cells notice that those levels have dropped. They've still got the scarcity of receptors for those chemicals that they need. And those receptors are key to only work with high levels of anger peptides. But now you've got low levels of anger peptides. So what is a hungry cell supposed to do? What it does is it sends a message up to the brain and says, hey, you haven't been angry for 3 hours. What's wrong? We need some anger chemicals down here. We need them to keep the cell working. Come on. And if you don't notice and you keep on being calm, it'll say, hey, what are you talking about? I don't have enough anger receptors to function at this level. I need more anger chemicals to work. And if you don't happen to notice and if you don't happen to get angry, it'll start screaming. And those are, by the way, cravings. It's what happens. It's the same reason that somebody who gets type 2 diabetes starts to crave sugar, because their cells need glucose and it can't get in. And they start to be very thirsty because all that glucose that's running around in their bloodstream that they can't get into their cell, it has to go somewhere. And so the kidneys say, okay, give me lots of water and I'll get some of it out that way. Cravings. In the same way, you're minding your own business thinking, oh, I feel quite good today. This is nice. And then all of a sudden, a nasty thought will come into your mind. You think, oh yeah, that person that I really hate or whatever, And you think, hang on, and if you're really paying attention, and this is the thing most of us don't, me included, if you're paying attention, then hang on a moment, I was feeling fine, and now I'm thinking about that horrible thing that I feel bad about whenever I think about it. And I didn't go there on purpose. I didn't want to feel this way. What the hell just happened? What happened is that your cells noticed that you weren't feeling angry. And they said, hang on a minute, we need those chemicals. Don't have enough receptors to operate comfortably, to operate normally. What's become normal for us is high levels. And you drop the levels, we're going to tell you. And that is emotional addiction, because those are the people who aren't happy unless they're unhappy. Those are the people who you just know, you walk into the room and they're going to pick a fight with you. Or the person that, you walk in and you're happy and and you say, oh, let's go and do this and go and do that. And I was doing this and it was really good. And 5 minutes later, after you talk with them, you feel like you just want to die because they're so miserable. Because that's what happens. That's why people get stuck in those really ugly states of being, It's because it feels normal at the body level. The body has memorized that way of being, and the cells have adapted to it. And the cells crave those emotions because they need them to function. That is how emotional addiction works. And that is why it is very hard to change a long-standing state of being. It's not just, it does take enormous will to change that. But the reason it takes enormous will, and you've got to have the right tools and you've got to know how, because with your mind is 5% of who you are, and the other 95% of you is memorized in your body like this. What the receptors are on your cells, and what they'll accept and what they won't accept, what they listen to and what they go, la 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 la, I'm not listening because you've been pummeling me for the last 20 years with misery, and I just need lots of misery now because otherwise I can't receive anything. So we've got to know a way to change that. I'm not talking about that yet, but this is how those people who are so thoroughly miserable, and I include myself in this, stay there. Until you become conscious of it, you start to notice it, and you think, oh my God, this is my body. It's gotten really used to being. Substitute your most common emotion that you would like to not feel all the time. My body is actually used to this. Oh my God. Does that mean that I'm going to have to practice feeling something else? Who knows how long? And this is the bit that's scary unless you understand that there are faster ways to do it. If you took 20 years to condition yourself into being a judgmental, angry, horrible, nasty person, it doesn't actually have to take 20 years to condition yourself out of that. But you are going to have to think some different thoughts and feel some different feelings somehow long enough or strong enough for your cells to go, oh, heck, there are lower levels now. And it's not just a momentary thing, and we've sent the message up and the brain said, no, we're not going to do this anymore. And it's said it long enough that the levels have dropped for long enough that the next time the cell divides, it actually upregulates those receptors and has more of them. That's the way out. At a cellular level, that's what we have to do. If we've signaled our cells so much that they've got tired of receiving the same chemicals of the same negative emotions, no matter what they are, even if it's just, I perpetually feel this kind of quiet sadness. It's sort of a limpid, it's peaceful, it's quiet, but I can't get out of it. I can't actually feel happy. I don't know what happy feels like, which is a little bit been my experience for a long time. It's like, what the hell does happy actually feel like? I don't think I know. My cells have been really accustomed to that. And I'm doing the work on myself too. Not to go, oh, why is that? What happened in my past? No, I can't remember, and it doesn't matter. But I have to teach my body how to feel something else. And really, that's the next piece I want to talk about. I actually have to teach my body. And there are ways to do that. And there are barriers to doing that because the body memorizes everything. And so you have to change the memories. And again, it's not about going, oh, when was it? Was I 5? Was I 6? Hot? What happened? Who did what? No. You don't have to do that. But you have to change the memories, and there are ways to do that. So that's what God and Me is about, is first you got to understand this is how your body works. This is how you get stuck in your past. But you can change it. And if you understand right down at your cells that your receptors change as the cells divide, well, the cells will keep dividing. That means that if you can change what's going on in your thinking and your feeling often enough, and with practice for long enough, your cells are going to change. And I can say that that's true. I'm a hell of a lot happier than I was. I didn't even know how scared I was until I stopped being that scared. And then for a long time, I just kept noticing all the things that would make me feel scared, but it was because it was no longer normal for me to feel scared. It was like it was an up and down, up and down, up and down. Oh my God, there's a lot of things that I get anxious about. Okay, well, let's denature those. Let's change it so that my brain no longer goes off all the time. So that's been my process, my journey. But that's what I want people to understand in a simple way, so that eventually I keep writing, and then I'll be creating exercises and ways for people to learn how to do this, because that's the point. It's all very well to know and understand, but until you can do something useful with it, it's just useful. It's just interesting information. By the way, if you're in a hurry and if you're able, go and check out Dr. Joe Dispenza, because he has taught me most of what I know. I learned a lot myself, and I keep learning and I keep studying, and there's nothing like explaining something to somebody else to really make you get inside it and understand it. And so I'm learning a lot as I do this. But he's the guy who's figuring out how this works, in a way that actually changes bodies dramatically. And I can talk about that too. You know, my body has changed. There are physical conditions I had that are not there anymore because I changed how I thought and how I feel. So I know it works. I know there's a lot more science behind it than I'm talking about. But this is my mission. This is my purpose, is to make it very simple and make it available to many this way. So that's what I'm doing. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, thank you. Do feel free to like, share and subscribe if you haven't already. And check me out on Patreon, because that's where my patrons get extra goodies. And it's only $5 a month. And they will end up being the crash test dummies when there are exercises to do. It's because they're my audience and they're the people who are really engaged in this. So I will be wanting them to try stuff out. And well, I'll probably let you guys try some of this out too. If you don't support me on Patreon, I don't want to lock it all up. But I do special things for my patrons, and I tell them stories about what I'm going through in my journey as well. And I love to share that. It's just for them. So thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to seeing you again next week, and see where we're up to then. Much love and thank you. Bye-bye.